December 8th, 1963, a day like any other. At Aldinga Beach, the annual South Australian Spearfishing Championships are set to begin. "23-year-old Rodney Fox, a life insurance salesman from Adelaide and former champion, takes to the water. He sets his sights on a large reef fish. Little does he know that he himself is being stalked by a great white shark. Through a series of near miracles, Rodney Fox arrives at Royal Adelaide Hospital in under an hour. The vascular surgeon there has just returned from an international conference with the very latest in surgical techniques. They go to work on the mutilated body delivered to the operating theater. The shark has punctured his left lung, left clavicle, and diaphragm. The jaws have bitten through all his ribs, gouged skin and muscle from his left side, and exposed several major organs. According to one surgeon, had Rodney arrived 5 minutes later, he would have bled to death. Sewn back together with over 450 stitches, he lies bedridden for 2 months with the pain and the awful memory.
Do you hope to continue skin diving one day?
I'll get in the water somewhere sometime, but I don't know whether I'll go in this gulf here where there's been 2 or 3 attacks in the last few years.
That was Rodney Fox then. And this is Rodney Fox now. Seldom has a single event so radically transformed a person. In a way, the great white shark that attacked him 30 years ago took his young life, but gave him another. In 3 decades, Rodney Fox has grown from a fearful shark victim into a shark champion and protector.
I think the sharks and the shark world is really beautiful and interesting, but the shark gets a raw deal, and people just hate it because they don't understand and they fear it. I love to see them flying and gliding through the water, and I think that most people would really enjoy it too if they realized they weren't going to be eaten alive.
This from a man who was himself nearly eaten alive. Rodney's life since the attack has been a continuous challenge to overcome his fear by facing it. Today, documentary filmmakers and marine scientists from all over the world travel to Australia to go looking for sharks with Rodney. His knowledge of living sharks is unparalleled. Marine biologist Eugenie Clark.
people who hear about Rodney's shark attack, they go, wow, he's an ordinary man like one of us. And yet, he had such a terrible experience. And on top of that, he's telling us that sharks aren't dangerous. They're good. We should preserve them. So this is what's so wonderful about Rodney, that somebody that suffered through such a terrible incident can now defend the animal that attacked him.
It wasn't always that way.
Reliving the shark attack story has been a continuous epic in my life. So many people want to hear how I survived, how I stuck my fingers in the shark's eyes, how I put my arms around it so it wouldn't bite, and how I went up to the surface and it followed me. And after about 8 or 9 years of telling the story, I read the original Reader's Digest first person award that I had written immediately afterwards, and I found I had changed the story a little. I was telling people what they wanted to hear and not necessarily the truth.
Time often affects memory. Here, the story is only 2 days old and not nearly so heroic.
All I remember is this big thing pushing me through the water. And it seemed to let go a bit when I pushed my hand up at it. And it still wouldn't let go. The pressure of the water might have been holding it in his mouth. And I managed to put both arms right around him, and I was looking for his eyes with my fingers. And after a while, he managed just to let go. And I managed to get to the surface.
Very luckily, there was a boat just coming over to see what was going on, because there was so much blood and disturbance in the water. They quickly rolled me into the boat. I had to keep both arms just like this so that they wouldn't rip my arms off. As they came to shore along this incredibly rough area there, they drove the boat up onto the shore and they loaded me onto a bit of a stretcher, and a car, the only car in the whole area that had been in this beach for about 4 or 5 years, was available, and they drove it out over the reef with 10 or 20 guys lifting it over the big lumps of the rocks through here, loaded me in the back of it, took off towards Adelaide. It was an absolute miracle, especially when they unloaded me out of the boat. As they did, my wetsuit slid open and my stomach actually loops of intestine came out, which seems funny now. I've got a good friend who actually tells me quite every now and again that he stuffed them back in with his fingers and they bunched me up.
Oh, it was his chest.
Rodney's wife, Kay.
But I didn't know how bad it was for many days afterwards. But by then he was up and breathing and talking, and so, you know, it's only later when they tell you all the things that were wrong, you realise just how close it was. But everyone in the hospital thought he was dying. But I knew he wasn't.
His attack drew worldwide attention. Rodney became a sensation almost overnight. The public notoriety would set his life on a brand new course. Three months after the attack, escorted by Kay, Rodney began his return to the sea, but it wasn't easy to forget his attack.
The fear of the sharks when I went back in the water was huge. My first time my head went underwater, I imagined in my mind sharks running in from all directions, and I said, "Stop it, you've got to control that."
Things would never exactly return to normal for Rodney. His love of the sea was now overshadowed by a terrible fascination with his old nemesis, the shark. In 1965, he helped organize the first expedition to track the great white. The adventure became a docudrama.
But danger in the unknown makes man himself the quarry of the most savage hunter of the deep. The great white shark. The white pointer. Great white death.
forecasted attack.
This is some of the first footage ever shot of a great white underwater.
Coming in. Now! Doesn't taste so good, that wire mesh.
The theme is revenge, a crusade to rid the seas of evil sharks.
Gapped, and the battle's almost over. A second man-eater whose jaws will never again menace an unsuspecting swimmer.
In those days, people feared sharks because they knew very little about them. They thought that every shark was a bad shark. And there was a big saying at that stage that the best shark is a dead shark.
The first film was followed by a second. Attacked by a killer shark is about Rodney, his attack and recovery. Again, it shows Rodney wielding a spear gun, bent on revenge.
Time out to reload. The cartridge inside the head explodes on contact. The tremendous concussion is transmitted into the body, killing instantly.
But it does twist the truth just a little.
I wasn't really after revenge. What I was frightened of was going back in the water and being bitten again. And so I was quite keen to try out the new explosive powerhead that had been invented. And I went underwater and I shot some of these sharks on film to show that man could protect himself in the water.
Rod's on a killing frenzy, intoxicated with his success of overriding his fears. This is exactly the scene he had been in need of.
In fact, Rodney's attitude was beginning to change, a fact obscured by the dramatic film script.
I didn't realize or understand much at that time, but I thought that's not the right attitude. We've got to look at it further than that. We've got to learn more about them and understand them and learn to live with them.
As Rodney's appreciation for the great white began to grow, so too did his expertise as a shark tracker. In 1969, he was called into work on a shark movie unlike any that had gone before.
Has that cage been checked out?
Film producer Peter Gimble turned to Rodney to deliver the sharks for his cameras.
Well, generally, after they've had a taste, they start really to tear into things and really start to be active.
And then you'll let us get in the water.
I'll push you.
The result, the critically acclaimed documentary Blue Water, White Death. In the crew was diver cameraman Stan Waterman. The two men would become lifelong friends.
It's gotta be 12.
Oh, yeah, he's been 12. Look at him, man.
Rodney had already done 2 films about the great white, and Rodney probably knew more about how to chum in the great white. Very important, that chumming, the putting out of what is called burley in Australia, to attract him, so that Rodney was the natural man to set up the scene for us. Rodney didn't have a cage back then. Gimble had the cages. Rodney knew where to find the burley, the chum, and set up the boats. And way back then at the beginning, Rodney was your man in Australia if you wanted to film the great white.
Sorry about your cage, fella. Where do you see it? How bad is it? What a mess.
What's he bent the cage up, Stan?
Oh, where do you see?
The carnage of earlier films was not repeated. Blue Water, White Death marks the beginning of a new kind of relationship between white sharks and human beings, one that allows the sharks to survive the encounter. For Rodney Fox, the occasional filmmaking stint was not enough to support his young family. So he took up abalone diving. a dangerous but lucrative profession. It would put food on the table for 18 years. But always the sharks weighed heavily on his mind.
One of the hardest things was to do over that 18-year period when I was abalone diving was when I had to return to abalone diving the week after I'd been out filming sharks. We'd attracted maybe 10 or 15 great whites around the boat during that week period. We'd had them biting on the cages and taking baits and showing these enormous teeth. And when the film crew had left and everything had quietened down, I had to make my living again and go back in the water, only a few miles from where we'd seen all these sharks. I'd had to put on another hat and say to myself, sharks don't like abalone. They generally don't eat humans. You'll be okay. But the first couple of days, I imagined those sharks were looking at me. And sometimes, when my knee would hit a soft sponge, I wondered whether that was a shark, whether it was a soft shark's belly, and whether it was biting my leg off. But I knew that it was fear in myself.
The danger to abalone divers was genuine enough. Some of the best abalone beds were near seal colonies where white sharks liked to hunt. But instead of killing the sharks, Rodney and his colleagues designed a protective working cage for the abalone divers. Then they tested it in shark-infested waters.
Watch out for that. Come on, quick. Hurry up. Quickly. Pull back again.
It really proves that that cage is safe to abalone dive out of, because you've been involved with 5 sharks down here swimming around, attacking it, and they've only taken the hose. And if you've got enough air to survive and you can get up to the surface, you'll be safe.
Exactly, yeah. Makes the adrenaline pump, doesn't it?
The adrenaline really started to pump in 1974 when Rodney was contracted to coordinate the filming of live sequences for the greatest shark film of all time. He had had experience with filming great whites in the wild, but Jaws was a different kind of project.
They'd sent over a small stuntman, a midget diver, and a small cage so that the sharks would look bigger, because Jaws, of course, Bruce was a 25-footer and our sharks were only 14-foot. And as we were dressing the little guy, one of the sharks came in and grabbed hold of the propeller on my boat and actually shook the boat physically. And it was well over 14 feet long and a very strong shark. And as it swam along the side, I'm saying to Carl, quick, get in the water, get in the water. The cameraman's ready, here's the sharks. And he's saying, no, no, no.
The stunt diver wasn't the only one who didn't want to go in the water. Jaws was great entertainment, but the public was terrorized, and the perception of sharks went from bad to worse.
Nobody realised at that time that it was going to be a horror film that was going to frighten so many people, including a lot of my friends, out of the water. I had people say to me, I wouldn't even go in the bath now after seeing the film Jaws.
For Rodney, Jaws was the turning point, the moment he finally realized that the sharks needed a champion, and so he set out to debunk the old myths. He started a business, an expedition business, taking filmmakers, scientists, even tourists out into the South Australian seas for face-to-face encounters with the real great white sharks. These days, his business serves two ends. It contributes to marine science, and it satisfies Rodney's rather large appetite for adventure.
Some experience, I tell you.
This scientific expedition will drop anchor in the Neptune Islands off the rugged coast of South Australia to find, film, and study great white sharks. Rodney's son Andrew has taken over the necessary, if noxious, chore of mixing the key ingredients of burley, a kind of foul stew that sharks seem to find irresistible. Blood, ground tuna, and a little seawater. That's the recipe. Andrew will create a smelly slick stretching several miles down current from the vessel. Any sharks in the area will find the invitation very attractive. Marine scientists from the University of Adelaide want to test the strength of a great white's bite and to identify the telltale signs of shark attack for forensic purposes, a grisly but necessary study. The sharks must be induced to bite a specifically designed pressure plate. First, they need to be worked into a biting mood.
We're ready now to throw her in?
Yes.
Okay, drop her in, Andrew.
Now that the shark has the idea, he gets his tuna on a plate.
Keep it in the air anyway, because he's a bit cranky. Whew.
Running tests on the great white sharks in the wild is always unpredictable.
We should have an impression on there.
The plate is designed to measure pounds of pressure per square inch.
How are you, boys?
We're out of calibration range here. We'll have to recalibrate this. That is amazing. You know, we're looking at the test strip now, and that looks as though that's
more than this one is 500 kilograms, 1,000 pounds.
1,000 pounds.
That one's more than 1,000 pounds.
1,000 pounds per square inch. enough to puncture metal plating. But what exactly is it that draws a great white and prompts it to bite? Is it the smell of prey, or the sight of it, or the vibrations it sends through the water? That's a crucial question for divers, so Rodney helped set up another experiment.
What I hope to do here is to really work out whether the great white sharks are interested in humans, whether they can actually see that there is a shield, an unseen shield there, whether they can detect that, and whether they may be interested in the fish or sound, and whether just to see just what they are interested in. They swim around and around so many times the cages without biting, and we haven't had any true results.
In order to test sight, Rodney will use a cage of 1/4-inch Lexan plastic to give the sharks a clear view of his shape. An underwater speaker will test for sound, broadcasting low-frequency vibrations to simulate the vibrations made by moving prey.
Intermittent.
A thawed tuna will provide scent. Will the shark show any clear preference? Which one will attract them the most?
The adrenaline that rushes in you as you go down there, and as a shark comes in when you're in the Lexan tube, gives you a real rush. It's excitement all over again. It's like the first time in my shark cages. It's exciting, and my heart, you can feel it a little higher and beating a little faster as you realise that you are part of an experiment, that the sharks don't really know whether they can get at you or not. It was quite unnerving, really, because I felt like I was naked in the middle of a street in a shop window and with everything exposed.
Again and again, the circling sharks pass Rodney by and return to the source of the sound vibrations. The proof is clear. At close range, underwater vibrations, not sight or smell, are what attracts the shark. Rows of sensory cells along the shark's flank are especially attuned to these stimuli.
No, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind they were far more interested in the low vibrations than they ever were in me or the tuna.
The more Rodney has studied them, the more he has come to learn about sharks. The great variety of sharks, all 370 species of them.
I get lots of pleasure from looking at the different species of sharks, from the carpet shark that lays on the bottom with his frilly mouth, to the nurse sharks that seem to rummage around and sleep a lot, to the beautiful whaler sharks and the bull sharks and the silky sharks and there's so many, the mako sharks and the great white sharks. It's all of them have a different field, a different way to swim, a different way of life, but they're all beautiful the way they swim and glide and fly through the water.
And the biggest and most mysterious of all, the whale shark. It's not just the largest of the sharks. It is, in fact, the largest fish in the ocean. But despite its menacing size and appearance, this is among the most gentle and benign of all sharks. It eats plankton, not people. Few in number, slow to reproduce, the whale shark is one of the great and vulnerable wonders of the oceans.
Whale sharks, to the diver, have been one of the greatest pinnacles of sharks in all the oceans of the world. They were the largest shark. They were a docile shark. They were a shark that you could hitch a ride on, or a friendly shark. All the things that the great white shark wasn't.
Growing to over 50 feet and 20 tons, the whale shark is so big that it supports other fish, like these remora. They hitchhike harmlessly on the whale shark and eat the food it leaves behind. Ironically, the most visible fish in the ocean is also one of the least understood. No one can say where or when these sharks reproduce, or even how old they grow to be. But some scientists believe they live as long as we do, roaming the tropical oceans in search of food and occasionally each other. Now imagine a shark this big with teeth to match, a massive meat-eating predator. At one time, such a shark did exist. Carcharodon megalodon, 50 feet of carnivore, lived during the Miocene era some 20 million years ago. It was the largest ocean-going predator that ever existed. Rodney traveled to South Carolina to find out more about the megalodon. He and naturalist Vito Bertucci will dive in the Cooper River off Charleston. It's a dangerous dive, but this was a hunting and dying ground for Carcharodon megalodon, and his fossilized teeth lie embedded in the river bottom.
The most important thing to worry about here is the current. Just to work your way into the current and down the anchor line. And then once we get down, you have to be aware that there are sharks and turtles in this area and an occasional alligator. And if you do come up on one, not to be startled by it. And if you ignore them, they usually ignore you. Alligators, the only danger with them is on the surface.
Yeah.
If you see one come at you at the surface, all you have to do is dump your air and go down, and they won't come after you.
Or attack it.
The sharks, if they come up to you, just give them a shot and they'll take off.
Well, I got the knee pads on for praying. I hope this turns out all right.
That'll be good.
And here goes my mask. And
the water is cold. Visibility is nil. The darkness is decidedly spooky.
I had some incredible images of monster sharks swimming around.
In these gloomy waters, a monster carnivore would be right at home. Within minutes, Rodney finds the first traces of these ancient killers. Luckily, of course, it's the teeth, not the shark.
You okay?
yeah, fine. I don't know if I can get up here very easy.
That's the best way. Just leave it here on the floor.
How do I get this helmet off? Oh, I feel a bit like Houdini.
Why are they different colours?
This one was in the sand.
On the sand?
Yeah, in the sand, and these were in the mud.
In the mud, like a bit further away. Yeah. You know, when I was heading down there with you for the first time, I thought, what am I doing here? It was dark and crazy, and I'm pulling and I'm spinning sideways on the rope down there. And it was only when I saw the bottom come up slowly that I realised there was a steady bottom there. And I thought, I can't give up now because I can't get back in the boat. and then I went on, and then when I saw that first half a tooth down there, I thought, oh, this is what it is. And then I started looking, and I forgot about all the problems of that you told me about down there, and started looking for teeth. And you know, you can get carried away.
Down in Jacksonville, Florida, Cliff Jeremiah is taking Vito's fossil teeth and reconstructing a megalodon shark jaw. It will be the largest shark jaw in the world, big enough to swallow a small car, and it has an entire set of properly matched teeth. It has taken Vito 19 years to collect the full set. Some 200 fossilized teeth will line the recreated jaw, adding almost 300 pounds in teeth alone.
Shark teeth, of course, stand out so much so, that white, pointy, ivory things, knives against their grey body. And of course, if you had somebody in a room pointing a revolver at you, you'd look at the revolver too, because it's the sharp pointy end, the point that's going to cause all the trouble.
Shark teeth are compelling. It's difficult not to admire them and react with a shudder. The only part of the shark's skeleton that's not cartilage. These razor teeth are used to dismember and devour prey. But despite our worries, only rarely is that prey human.
First of all, the word shark is such an enormous pull on people. Sharks, 300 or 400 varieties of sharks in the world, all go together as one name, shark, and that spells out fear. Research was done and shows that the word shark had a higher reaction on the nervous system of people than any other word in the English language. And so the general public, when they talk about sharks, they talk about something they cannot understand and something they fear.
In fact, sharks are not all scary. Only a handful are any kind of threat to people. What they are is vitally important to the oceans. As top predators, they help maintain the entire balance of the underwater world. Rodney's fascination with these great hunters has taken him all around the planet. His quest? To learn still more about sharks. And it's a quest that never ends.
All right, we're going to place the mask on, and the way to do that is to put your chin in first, and then we'll pull this strap over the top.
Here at Walker's Cay in the northern Bahamas, Rodney and Dr. Eugenie Clark have come to swim with reef sharks in the wild. On this dive, Rodney and Eugenie are wearing special masks that allow them to communicate underwater. No metal cages, no Lexan tubes, just a swim alongside the sharks, to show that if you know what you're doing, you have nothing to fear. They've picked a dive center where frozen fish remains are put out to lure large numbers of sharks for the divers.
It's just beautiful to be here and watch them.
The nurse sharks are the first to arrive.
They certainly don't seem to be paying any attention to us, do they?
Food your fish. What sort of food or fish do these nurse sharks normally eat?
Well, the nurse sharks eat the food on the bottom. Shellfish, crab, and any kind of fish they can get a hold of.
Jeannie's eating your hair. What can it? They're trying to eat your hair, Jeannie.
Trying to eat my hair? I really like that, Rodney.
He just stopped then and wanted to be scratched some more.
While the nurse sharks are fairly docile, the black tips that follow are much more aggressive.
That one just tried to bite me on the camera, so I suppose they are dangerous. How about staying close to me? It's getting a bit excited here. How many species do you think we've seen, Jeannie?
Well, it looks like 3 species for sure. The gray reef, or the reef shark as it's called in the Caribbean. A lot of these nurse sharks, and then the blacktip. I don't know if they're 2 species or one of the blacktips.
Yet even the blacktip and gray reef sharks seem more interested in the food than the humans. There are almost 80 sharks feeding simultaneously, and for the most part, they simply ignore the divers.
Funny how when we're down here with them the way we are now, we both stop feeling that there's any danger at all in the situation. We're just so fascinated with watching them.
In fact, today, people threaten sharks more than sharks threaten people.
Sharks are being killed, sometimes purely out of hate. They don't even use them. There's some of the shark tournaments where they just go out and kill sharks. But I think we're getting away from that. There's too much now in television and magazine articles and books, and people like Rodney Fox who are telling people what good sharks can be, and who are living examples of how, if you understand a shark, you can go on swimming with them and they're not to be feared and hated.
They're just sniffing like little puppy dogs, aren't they?
Some sharks you can swim with, some you can't. It takes some education, experience, and common sense to figure out which ones are safer than others. Silky sharks, for instance, are on the safe list. And with silkies, there's a twist, as Bahamian Stewart Cove will show Rodney.
And when we go down there, you're going to twist its tail.
It's important when the sharks, we're swimming around the sharks, keep our hands down because they do have teeth. But we can, when they swim by us, if you grab their tails and twist them gently, it will paralyze the shark. And when you do that, you can actually roll them over, stroke their bellies. We use this maneuver to actually remove fish hooks. And so we sort of do the sharks a little bit of a favor and remove the fish hooks. And it doesn't seem to bother them. You can paralyze the sharks and then release the sharks. He'll come right back to you and you can do it again.
Well, I'm game. Let's try it.
Silky sharks are so called because instead of the usual rough shark skin, theirs is smooth as silk. Reaching up to 9 feet in length, they inhabit the waters off Nassau to the south of Walker's Cay. Grabbing silkies by the tail might sound tricky, but divers in the area have been doing it for a while, ever since they first set out to remove the hooks of careless fishermen. That's when they discovered the silkie's special weakness. It's called tonic immobility, and it's a quirk of the shark's nervous system. A kind of temporary paralysis brought on by twisting the shark's tails and flipping them over.
I can't believe this. Those sharks are so friendly.
They're right behind you. They're all around.
That's incredible. I never experienced anything like that before. So silkies are friendly. Nurses are okay. What about any others? You got any other dangerous sharks?
We got no dangerous sharks in the Bahamas.
Yeah?
Unfortunately, 2 weeks ago, we had a longline boat come into our area and target our shark dive, and out up in the reef area on the inland sites, and caught 35 of our shark population, and they all had different names, and they were like our kids. It was like having your pet dog killed, and we had a great affinity, a great affection for all these for these wonderful sharks.
Well, after that great white shark got me, I really knew nothing about sharks, and here you are, you know, this is one of the 350 varieties of sharks in the world, and you just have to find out which ones are potentially man-eaters, or man-biters, as they say. I'm less frightened now than I was before my shark attack, because I've learnt to find out which ones are dangerous and which ones aren't, which ones you can handle, which ones you can swim with. I think they're beautiful. Hi, Joe. Felicity. Margaret. Boys and girls. Many different shapes and sizes. Come on. It's my belief that education will stop this massacre of all the sharks and the massacre of our oceans. There's a great upwelling amongst people now to say, hey, let the sharks live. Let's learn more about them. Let's find out how we can enter the waters without having to kill them all off. And it's the education of our younger people now, and I see a large uprising of it. Young 6- and 7-year-olds saying, don't throw any plastic in the water, don't do this. Why are you killing that shark? Why is that photograph of a dead shark? It's really great to see that we are starting to let our seas live.
For Rodney Fox, the past 30 years have been a journey with the shark. It was a voyage that started in one terrible instant. A voyage into the face of fear. Over 30 years, Rodney has traveled from terror and death to understanding and life. From the early days when killing sharks seemed right, to the present when harming them, even accidentally, seems very wrong. In a way, he was chosen on that awful day 30 years ago to speak for the sharks. Chosen for a special lifelong bond. For while the great white would put one mark on his body, the next 30 years would leave another on his soul.
30 years ago, I had no idea I'd be dragged into a whole lifetime of study of sharks. And when I look back now, I realize that, and feel quite proud that I've worked with so many interesting people. And what I've tried to do over that period of time is to get the respected filmmakers and the scientists that know what they're talking about to learn more about the great white and get them to portray that the shark isn't a bad shark, that we have to learn to live with it and not just kill it. And I look back over 30 years to find that slowly it's been happening and working, and all of the people agree with my philosophy. Let the sharks live.